Everyone knows. There is a billionaire female CEO in New York City who has risen from the ashes after a setback. I have also heard that she was abandoned by her ex-husband during her low point. And I am the blind and blamed ex-husband. Now I can only kneel before her, beg her to lend me $1 million. My once lover, her eyes are cold and ruthless. Wants to borrow money, no problem, as long as you promise Christopher and I to be our servants for 30 days. I am forced to kneel outside the door, listening to the sounds from inside. The hands that once held a paintbrush were broken one by her lover. She was also mocked and humiliated by countless people. Everyone knew during these 30 days I was not even as good as the Williams family dog, but she didn't know. A few years ago, in order to save her career, I sold all the organs in my body that could be sold, including the painter's most precious corneas. After 30 days, my body finally could not hold on. I was tortured to death. However, after I died, she went red-eyed and went crazy. Outside the Williams Group office, I knelt on the ground and listened expressionlessly to the indistinct sounds and gasps coming from inside. The people inside were my ex-wife Isabella and her new husband Christopher. I had come to my ex-wife to borrow money. People came and went in the company, their tone of voice full of disdain. Is this Isabella's ex-husband? How can he not see anything? Yes, that's him. When the Williams Group ran into trouble, he left Isabella without a second thought. He got rid of the problem. Now the Williams Group is doing better than ever. What's he doing here? Oh dear. His eyes are vacant. It's really uncomfortable. Hearing these cold words, I feel strangely calm inside. In a month, my life will be over. For someone who is about to die, what other people think no longer matters. I can feel it. When they are in the house and realize I am outside the door, their movements become more unrestrained and interspersed with a few intimate words. Isabella, ask the security guard to ask that person to leave. He is listening outside. I feel a little uncomfortable. Let him listen. Isn't it more interesting? Just let him see how good our relationship is now. There was a murmur from outside the door. I knelt outside the door. My thoughts involuntarily returned to the past. Isabella and I were married when we were young. We met at university. I don't know where our love began, but it grew and grew. She studied financial management. I studied painting. She was lively and cheerful. I was quiet and reserved. Everyone who knew us thought, we'll definitely grow old together. After graduation, we worked hard together. She decided to start her own business. I gave her all the money I had saved for more than 20 years. I knew that my beloved Isabella was a genius. She would definitely succeed. I chose to become a painter. I stayed at home to cook for her. But just when her career was gradually picking up, an accident happened. I still remember that night very clearly. She usually smiled at me no matter how tired she was after being out. But that day, she came home crying. Honey, I'm finished. Everything is over. Seeing her in tears made my heart ache. What's wrong? I tried to persuade Isabella. If there's anything you can't handle, you can tell your husband. He'll help you. But Isabella just shook her head. She refused to say anything. She insisted on bearing the burden herself. I couldn't bear to let her shoulder it all alone. After she fell asleep, I quietly opened her phone and took a look. Her phone was very tidy, apart from work-related content. There were no messages from other men, but before I could feel happy, I discovered that her company was about to have a major problem. Although she was capable, she was inexperienced. She was tricked into signing a bet agreement. Now there is a major loophole in the company's finances, an urgent need for $1 million to fill it. For a newly established company, this situation may make all her previous efforts go to waste. I understand how important this company is to her. It is her hard work and dream. If it encounters setbacks from the beginning, she may lose confidence as a result. It will be difficult for her to pick herself up again. I was especially anxious. I was thinking of ways to help her, but even if we took out all the money we had, it would only solve a small part of the problem. Making money just by painting was too unstable, so I put down my paintbrush and started going out to make money, no matter what dirty work it was, as long as the pay was good. I was willing to stoop down and do anything. I had to do 3 jobs a day, and only eat half a meal, but the money still doesn't come fast enough. Isabella is also anxious to make money. She drinks like crazy in order to sign a contract. As a result, she develops a stomach ulcer. Watching her sleep with the traces of tears on her face makes me feel unbearably sad. God help me. I feel so useless. I can't even earn a million or just end my life. I'm probably the most incompetent man in the world because I could never earn that million. Just when I was about to give up hope, a thought suddenly flashed through my mind. I wasn't completely without anything. At least I still had this body. With a cry, my senses gradually returned. Come in. I slowly got up. Using a walking stick, I limped into Isabella's office. Without my sight, I could no longer paint. I could only beg for a living. While I was begging, I was injured. But I don't even know what the person who hit me looks like. Isabella saw me and said in surprise, "Alexander, how did you become like this?" I gave a bitter smile and said nothing, but Christopher next to me couldn't hold back anymore. "Long time no see. Alexander can act now. No wonder he is the heartless man who abandoned his wife in distress. His methods are really varied." As soon as Christopher opened his mouth, Isabella's tone immediately changed. She no longer hesitated. Her voice was as cold as ice. "Alexander, don't think I'll fall for your little tricks again. This won't work on me. Go ahead. What do you want from me?" I stood straight. "Isabella, I'd like to borrow $1 million. Christopher seemed to have heard something really funny and couldn't stop laughing. "You're joking, right, Alexander? $1 million is enough to make you pay 10 times over. You abandoned Isabella. Now you see that she succeeded. And you want to go back to her. You really are a man who only cares about money." Isabella's tone became cold, with obvious anger. "Come here and kneel down. Shoeshine Christopher with your mouth. I'll lend it to you." I clenched my fists. I felt a cold wind blowing through my body. All that was left was deep pain. I couldn't see the two of them, but I guess they were leaning close to each other. Christopher was sitting in a chair, waiting for me to use my mouth to carry his shoes over to him. I wanted to speak, but I thought of my brother in the hospital, urgently needing medical treatment to save his life. I gave a helpless smile and knelt down. "Okay, Isabella told me to do this. I'll just do as I'm told." I knelt down with difficulty. I slowly felt for Christopher's shoe with my hand. I whispered, "If you just lend me $1 million." Suddenly, my finger suddenly hurt. "Alexander, we agreed to do it with my mouth. Don't try to fool me. Did I tell you to use your hands?" Christopher's voice was full of obvious delight. He stamped on my hand with his foot. It hurt so much that I gritted my teeth. He must have been very dissatisfied with me, because he had appeared when Isabella and I were at our best. At that time, Isabella had treated him like a stray dog. "Okay, Christopher." If I could see, I would see that Christopher already had my shoe in his hand. He was smiling triumphantly. He wanted to see me make a fool of myself. I just stood there, kneeling on the floor. I used my mouth to feel around on the carpet for the missing shoe. I must have looked ridiculous. "That's enough." Isabella's voice was cold as ice. She was obviously furious with me. "You'll do anything for money. Have you no manhood left? I can't believe I ever liked you. Thinking about it now really makes me feel sick. You want money, don't you? If you really need it, I can give it to you. Since you'll do anything for money, then you can serve Christopher and me for a month. I'll lend you $1 million, and you don't have to pay it back. This deal should be very cost-effective for you." I knelt on the ground and said with a bitter smile, "Yes, thank you, Isabella, for taking care of me and giving me such a good deal." Isabella looked at me and saw that I was only thinking about money. She was so angry that she kicked me in the chest. After she finished talking, she turned around and left, and she left me with these words, "From tomorrow onwards, you are an employee of the Williams Group. Remember to come to work on time." Christopher ran after her. I was the only one left kneeling there. Suddenly, I vomited a mouthful of blood. I quickly covered my mouth with my hand to avoid staining the carpet in Isabella's office. There were also some pieces of internal organs mixed in the blood. Isabella still didn't know. I only had 1 month left. That day, I really had no other choice. I suddenly thought that at least I still had my own body. So, I called the underground doctor on the toilet door. I walked into the small, smelly, and messy clinic of my own accord. In order to prevent Isabella from making an impulsive decision, I took her by the ear and repeatedly told her, "Don't believe the unreliable advertisements in the toilets." But when it was my turn, I realized that it had become my last hope. At least, it would only hurt me. I could not hurt others to make money. I lay on the cold operating table waiting for them to remove my internal organs. But this black clinic, in order to save money, gave me fake anesthesia. Halfway through the operation, I woke up unexpectedly. I could clearly see them remove my liver and kidneys. They also drew my blood. My body felt like an empty shell. However, the doctor sadly told me, "Even so, I'm afraid this still won't add up to 1 million. But there is some good news. My corneas happen to match the needs of a rich man. If I agree to sell my corneas as well, they are willing to give me 1 million. But for me, as a painter, my eyes are almost my professional life. If I lose one hand, I still have the other hand to paint with. If I even lose my hands, I can still try to paint with my feet and mouth. Even if there is something wrong inside my body, I can still recuperate. Maybe I can even live a few more years. But without a cornea, I can no longer paint. I lie in bed, tears streaming down my face. Fine, do it. I would rather lose the chance to ever again appreciate the vibrant colors in a painting than see Isabella's tears and disappointed eyes. As long as she can fly freely, I am willing to sacrifice my sight. After the operation, I lose my sight. Oh, I am still a visually impaired person. I groped my way back to our rented house. Along the way, because I was not used to the dark, I had some difficulty walking. Isabella was still in the hospital. She did not know the situation on my side. I rummaged around the house and found a tape recorder. I recorded a tape for her. Because I could not see, I could only express myself through audio recordings. I kept talking about my dissatisfaction and boredom in the recording. I said she had let me down too much. I didn't want to be dragged down by her anymore. I'm young, but I'm already saddled with millions of dollars in debt. I also made it clear that I've long since lost my feelings for her. I turned off the tape recorder. I couldn't hold back my tears. The wounds I had previously dealt with in haste also began to ache violently, but my eyes were dry. I couldn't even squeeze out a single tear. I felt sorry for my wife. When she wakes up and finds I'm not here, and when she comes home and hears this recording, how sad she'll be. But I'm already an incomplete person. I can't even paint anymore. I've lost so many organs. I don't think I have long to live. Why should I delay someone else's beautiful life? Rather than let such a good girl be with someone useless like me, I decided it would be better for her to hate me. So, I transferred 1 million yuan to her through an anonymous account. Then I left the city. At that time, I never imagined I would ever appear in front of her again. I only took with me the silver ring that we had given each other as a token of our love. I didn't take anything else. As a result, I didn't have a single penny. I had to beg for money to survive. I knew I shouldn't bother her again, so I used the little money I had left to buy a ticket to the neighboring province. I thought I would just live day to day. I would survive by begging. But then I met my younger brother Ethan while begging. Ethan is like me. We were both abandoned, disabled people. He has congenital heart disease. It may attack at any time. So he was abandoned by his family. When others bully me because I'm blind, only he stood up for me. Although we both ended up getting beaten, but I've treated him like a brother ever since. 3 days ago, Ethan and I were picking up trash together. She suddenly fainted. I took him to the hospital. The doctor told me he had a congenital heart attack. If he is to be treated, he will need $1 million artificial heart. The doctor also said, "My body has been overtaxed for so long, I have never had a proper rest. I probably won't live long. I may only have a month left." Ethan was lying in the hospital bed, pale and smiling at me. "It's okay, brother. Ethan is going to become an angel in heaven." Suddenly, I felt a warmth in my hollow eyes. I said, "Brother will definitely earn $1 million. Don't worry." For Ethan's sake, I decided to go to William's group tomorrow, work for Isabella and Christopher. They really did everything they could to make things difficult for me. During the day, Isabella went to work. I would kneel in front of her office. In the evening, when she came back from work, she would always find ways to embarrass me. For example, she would make me bark like a dog, or she would lead me around in circles in the office. These were all common occurrences. Over time in the Williams Group, everyone thinks I, Alexander, am lower than dirt. The employees make fun of me. They post videos of me being bullied online. It's become a laughing stock for everyone. Even the cleaning lady, when she's in a bad mood, can pick up her broom and hit me hard. I can even endure such injustice. I'm really willing to do anything for money. I have no principles at all. Isabella did the right thing. That's what you should do to such a heartless person. I never said a word. I quietly endured their accusations. Isabella is doing well now. Why should I mention the past? Let her worry about it. Just get through one more day. The ordeal will be over. I can't hold on much longer. These past few days, I've clearly felt my health deteriorating. I'm afraid I really can't hold on much longer. But Christopher's methods are even more ruthless than I imagined. That day, I was kneeling outside Isabella's office, lost in thought. Suddenly, I heard some hasty footsteps outside the door, and a familiar voice. My shoulders, which had been straight, tensed. That voice sounded like my teacher's. And there were quite a few former classmates. Thank you, Christopher, for showing us around Isabella's company today. Christopher, Isabella has really treated you well. One of you is a big entrepreneur and the other is a rich playboy. What a perfect match. Someone is praising Christopher. It seems that Christopher invited them to Isabella's company. Isabella and Alexander. It's actually quite a pity in college they were the golden boy and girl of our school. Listen to the voice. It sounds like my good friend Michael from college. The million for Isabella. I asked him to transfer it from an anonymous account. He understands the situation. He can't help but defend me. Someone sneers. Seemed to want to expose my shame. At that moment, a gentle old man's voice moved me to tears. It's okay. We don't know all the facts yet. Don't jump to conclusions. What have I always told you? That was the voice of the old professor I respected the most. I grew up without parents at school. The professor helped me a lot. In my heart, he was like a father to me. I trembled, wanting to hide in a corner. I hoped they wouldn't notice me. I was used to physical harm, but I didn't want my professor to see me lose my dignity and become unpresentable. However, Christopher didn't let me off the hook so easily. In a voice that was both exaggerated and harsh, he shouted my name, Alexander. Aren't you going to say hello to your mentor? I lowered my head. For the first time, my body trembled uncontrollably. The old professor was very surprised. His voice trembled. He came up quickly. He grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me. Is it really you, Alexander? I tried to find you after graduation, but I couldn't get in touch with you. How did you end up like this? My brother saw this scene. His eyes welled up with tears. He quickly came over and tried to help me up. I shook my head. I remained kneeling in the doorway. Christopher laughed unrestrainedly. Professor, you and Alexander have known each other for so long, you probably don't know him at all. He'll do anything for money. The old professor turns his head angrily. He says sternly to him, "That's not true. Alexander has been with me for years. He's a good painter. He's hardworking and reliable. He has a kind heart. How could he be like you say?" Christopher raises his eyebrows. You don't believe me? Okay then. I'll just have to prove it to you, Alexander. Come here and lick my shoes. I don't want to move, no matter who comes. I don't want my professor, who is both my teacher and my friend, to see me in such a sorry state. But just watch me stand still. Christopher sneered, as if someone were forcing you. Isn't this the $1 million deal you proposed yourself? If you don't want to do it, I'll go find Isabella. No, thinking of Ethan still in the hospital. I slowly knelt forward. I used my tongue to touch Christopher's shoe. My brother Michael was already crying with anger. Christopher, you can't do this to him. You don't know how much he has sacrificed for Isabella. I turned around. I shook my head at him. I signaled him to stop. I don't have many days left in this life. Why bother? What have you done? I don't understand anything. These were Isabella's words. She heard a noise outside. She went out to check it out. She happened to hear what Michael had just said. Seeing the people around her, she immediately understood what had just happened, but she didn't look at Christopher. She directly asked Michael what he had just said. Christopher interrupted. What else could he do? Because Isabella's company had a problem, he immediately chose to leave her. What's more, when Isabella was hospitalized with a stomach perforation, he secretly left. This kind of behavior is really unacceptable. The old professor looked shocked. With a trembling voice, he asked me, "Alexander, is what they said true?" I gave a bitter smile and nodded. Immediately afterwards, the professor slapped me in the face. It didn't really hurt. After all, he was old. His strength was not as heavy as the injuries I had suffered in the past few days. But I felt that the slap hit my soul directly. It hurt so much that I could hardly breathe. "I'm really disappointed in you. I never thought that my most valued student would do such a thing. If I had known you were like this, I would never have helped you, and I would never have taken you as my apprentice. Look at you now. I really can't bear to watch. Hold on. Don't let them find out anything. Alexander, you can do it." I knelt upright, motionless, but my heart, which had been calm, suddenly ached violently. I heard Christopher's reply. Isabella's voice had originally been gentle, but now it was full of mockery. Yes, what other answer could I have expected to hear? I heard it with my own ears that year. I remember every word clearly. If Christopher hadn't been there for me the whole time and helped me through the difficult times, I probably wouldn't have made it. "Alexander, tomorrow will be the last time you'll be with me. Get ready," Michael said, his voice breaking as soon as he saw Isabella. "Isabella, Alexander can't take it anymore. Please let him go. You don't know him." I interrupted him, fighting back tears. "That's enough, Michael. I deserve this. I'm the kind of person who'll do anything for money. Don't say another word." Hearing me admit it myself made the professor so angry that he stormed off. Christopher was even more smug. The students were talking about it. "You really can't tell what someone is like just by looking at them. I never would have guessed that he was like this." Yes, Isabella was fooled by him too. People like him really can't be trusted. He has no integrity. He's worse than a dog. Dogs are grateful. He's worse than a dog. The professor's disappointment and the ridicule from the students. It really hurt. I have to hang in there, because if I can just hold out for one more day, I'll be able to get the million I need to save Ethan. When I woke up in the morning, Ethan had called me on video call. As soon as the call connected, he started crying really hard. Maybe it was my pale face that gave me away. He noticed something was wrong. He asked anxiously, "Brother, what's wrong? You look so pale, and you have so many injuries." Ethan asked worriedly, "Who's been bullying you? I'm so scared." "Brother, don't fly away like a butterfly, okay?" I said with a smile. If my brother flew away as a butterfly, he would remain on Earth, forever and ever watching over Ethan. Ethan will definitely live a long and healthy life. I comforted Ethan for a while. Then I put down the phone. The doctor whispered to me, "Ethan's physical condition is getting worse and worse. If surgery is not performed as soon as possible, it may be life-threatening." Fortunately, today is the deadline. I leaned on my crutches and slowly walked towards the Williams Group's entrance. The sound in my ears made me freeze. In the Williams Group building, the voice of the announcement kept echoing. It was a recording I had left for Isabella before. It seemed to have been played many times. The sound quality was a bit fuzzy, but my meanness and arrogance were still clear. Isabella's voice rang in my ears. "You said a vain and obnoxious man like you. What should I do to teach you a lesson?" I swallowed. My voice was a little hoarse. "Whatever you say." Isabella laughed, but there was no joy in her laughter. "Beat you. I don't want to get my hands dirty. Whoever goes up and slaps her will get a pay rise. The harder the slap, the bigger the pay rise. I, Isabella, will keep my word. Don't worry about the consequences. He's just a dog to me, Isabella." These words caused a stir among the Williams Group employees. Everyone immediately began to discuss them enthusiastically. "Is it true? Isabella has spoken. It must be true. If you don't act, I will." Christopher and Isabella were chatting easily. Christopher said, "Isabella, I want to teach him a lesson too. I've had my eye on that sports car recently. I'll buy it for you, with my card. My Christopher angel deserves the best." I stand still. My body is rigid. I try hard to hold back the tears in my eyes. The repeated voice on the loudspeaker makes me feel unbearably sad. It's as if I've lost all strength to resist. "Just hold out for one more day. It won't be long. I won't be able to stand any longer." They beat me one after the other. Slaps and punches fall on me non-stop. Someone even pours boiling hot tea on me, and they kept on shouting insults. Some of them were especially cruel. They targeted my vulnerable areas like my stomach and head. Isabella laughed next to me. Don't pretend. You think I still believe you and pity you. Don't even dream about it. Keep going. The one who hits the hardest will get a promotion later, so the beating got even worse. My face was burning. My stomach hurt like hell. He fell to his knees. I couldn't help coughing up a mouthful of blood mixed with entrails. That's enough. Isabella suddenly called a halt. Her voice was full of suppressed anger. You care so much about money, Alexander. If you don't have money, are you useless? I smiled bitterly, wiping the blood from my face. I had to save him. Without the 1 million, Ethan wouldn't survive. Christopher said to Isabella, let me deal with him, trying to get money from us. It's not that easy. He volunteered to show me. The sound of his leather shoes got closer and closer to me. Then he bent down, whispered in my ear, guess who bought your corneas? I've disposed of your kidneys, liver and corneas, thanks to your million. Isabella had been cold to me before, after you left. I told her the money was from me. I've been comforting her and keeping her company, and I have to thank you for using an anonymous account and leaving a recording. You said, how can I thank you? My eyes widened suddenly because I was weak. I felt a sharp pain in the fingers that were holding onto the ground. Christopher's leather shoes were pressing heavily on my fingers. That hand that had once drawn graceful lines on a blank sheet of paper to match the color of my lover's eyes had been completely crushed at this moment. 10 fingers are connected to the heart. I held back the scream, but in the end I couldn't help but scream. Ah, it hurts. It hurts so much. My brain screamed in pain. But what I cared about more was the plain silver ring on my hand. I still remember clearly. Isabella bought it for me with the company's first profit. I haven't proposed to you yet. Consider this my proposal to you. In the future, you can only marry me. If you treat me badly in the future, I'll take back what I said. She was blushing with shyness. Her cheeks were flushed. She was as beautiful as the Venus in a Botticelli painting. I was so distracted that I could hardly look away. Please, please, don't step on my ring, please. Even if you break my hand, it's fine. Just please give me back my ring. Christopher noticed the ring on my ring finger. It was as if he had discovered something extraordinary and took it from my hand. Isabella, did you give this to him? Do you want it back? Isabella said coldly. He doesn't deserve it. Only someone as kind as Christopher deserves my ring. I'll buy you the most expensive one. This worthless thing, you can do whatever you want with it. I begged. Isabella, please. Can I have this ring back, please? It was the last thing I had left, however. I could hear Christopher's laughter clearly as he stepped on it. The tiny ring instantly deformed and twisted, just like our past. Alexander. Someone came running over and helped me up. It looked like my best friend Michael. He had heard about the situation here from somewhere. He rushed over. Michael shouted angrily, Isabella, how could you be so heartless? Alexander has done so much for you. He even sold his corneas to save your company. And this is how you repay him. Isabella sounded as if she had heard something ridiculous. Christopher gave that to me. Alexander, you disgust me. You tried to deceive me about that too. Michael wanted to say more. I shook my head to stop him. I said to Isabella, Isabella, can you give me $1 million now? For some reason, this torture was painful for me. Isabella didn't look happy either. She said coldly, fine, fine, fine. I'll give it to you. You can hold on to your money for the rest of your life. Isabella threw a card at me. I used my broken fingers to slowly feel for it and pick it up. I also found the ring that had been crushed. Finally, Michael helped me. I limped away. Before I left a message. We're even. I gave you $1 million before. Now you've given it back to me. I don't want to hate you anymore, but I can't continue to love you either. Loving you is too painful. I didn't know. Behind me, Isabella was looking at me with a complicated expression. After I returned home, I transferred the money to Ethan's doctor. Not long after, I passed away at Michael's house. This was actually no surprise. I was already weak. Add to that the torture they had subjected me to these past few days. Even my 10 fingers had been broken. My already weak body stopped breathing after I had settled Ethan's affairs. I floated in the air. I watched Michael scatter my ashes into the sea. along with Isabella and my rings. This was my last wish. I also went to Ethan's hospital. I watched him go through surgery. The Ethan of the future will have a bright and shining life, unlike me. After reading all this, I was about to leave. Unexpectedly, things suddenly changed. Ethan's doctor heard about me and couldn't help posting anonymously online, which caused a huge stir. Many netizens became curious. They wanted to find out who I was. It was supposed to be a heartwarming story about two homeless brothers. But some of my characteristics were recognized by an old schoolmate. He directly exposed my true identity. I am Alexander, Isabella's ex-husband from New York City. Some people began to question whether I was just stirring up a fuss. They spoke harshly to the doctor. They asked how much he had been paid. But then the doctor had a change of heart. He came forward to testify on my behalf. Everyone found out what I had done to Isabella. Many netizens took up my cause, but some still didn't believe it. It wasn't until Alexander and Ethan came forward and spoke up for me that people began to believe. As netizens dug deeper, they discovered the story of an artistic genius who was forced to design and lost her eyes and internal organs. She also lost her lover. She was finally abused at home for 30 days and died tragically. This story has attracted a great deal of attention. It also reached Isabella's ears. The president of the Williams Group did not go out for 3 days and nights. When she went out again, she lost control of herself and knelt in front of Michael. Just to see me again, please, please, let me see him again. He must still be alive. The news on the internet is all false, right? Isabella kept on kowtowing. Her pretty face was covered in tears. Her forehead was bleeding from the constant banging. She cried, "I don't expect Alexander to forgive me. I just want to see him again. To tell him I'm sorry, please." Michael looked at her coldly. He said, "I can't help you." Isabella pleaded, "How much do you want? A luxury car? A villa? I can give you all that. Just tell me where Alexander is. I've called him many times. I've sent him many text messages. He never answered. I can't help you. Because you and your husband abused him to death. His body was covered in bruises when he died. Even the doctor who performed the autopsy couldn't hold back his tears." Michael turned and walked away, leaving Isabella standing there alone. Her eyes were red. She cried and screamed like she had lost control. Then Isabella knelt outside the door of the house we had previously rented for 3 days and 3 nights. Isabella fainted outside the door. She didn't wait for me to show up. When she woke up, Christopher was by her side. With red eyes, he asked her how she felt. I sneered. I thought to myself that even without me, the two of them were still so happy. Unexpectedly, Isabella stared coldly at Christopher. She slapped him directly in the face, crooking his face. Her tone was cold. "I won't let you go." Isabella really did mean what she said. She ignored the legal risks and locked Christopher up. Every day she inflicted on him the same injuries I had suffered. Today she removed his kidney. Tomorrow she would take his liver. But she would not let Christopher die. She wanted to torture him slowly. Christopher could not stand the pain and cursed, "You heartless person, how dare you take revenge on me? Who was it that misunderstood Alexander in the first place, hurting him the most, and you let the whole company beat him up? You think you can stay out of this," Isabella said with a smile as she used a tool to remove his eye. "After I finish what I'm doing, I'll go find him." Isabella's days were not easy either. What she had done to me before was spread online by people who like to stir up trouble, especially after the video of her instructing someone to beat me was exposed. There was an outcry online. The Williams Group's stock price also plummeted as a result, but she doesn't care about the criticism. She continues to do what she wants. She just focuses on herself. She heard that Michael had thrown something into the sea, so she hired a team of yachts. They searched all night. They hoped to find my remains, but my ashes have long since blended into the sea. They have disappeared without a trace. More than 10 days have passed. She has only found the ring. Ixal is engraved on the inside, compared to the gorgeous jewelry Isabella would later own. This was just the simplest basic model, and it had been stepped on and deformed. She held the ring, kneeled on the ground, and couldn't stop crying. She went to see Ethan to find out what had happened to me over the years, And then she went to see Michael to find out the whole story. Only then did she understand how deeply I loved her, even more than my own life. But by the time she realized it, I had already left. Isabella returned to the cabin where we had lived. The rented place still held traces of our lives. It turned out that she had bought the cabin. It had remained exactly as it was all those years ago. I couldn't understand her thoughts. If she hated me, why did she seem unable to let go of the past? She said she loved me, but why did it make me feel so bad? Isabella had been sleeping very little recently. Every day, she either kept busy in front of the computer or staring blankly at the things I left behind. Sometimes she cries. Sometimes she hurts herself with a knife. Hang in there. Hang in there. Isabella, you still have things to finish. You can't go to him. She keeps repeating, but she continues to lose weight day by day. 1 month later, 2 major events occurred in New York City, which attracted the attention of the entire city. The first was the announcement by the Williams Group that it would transform into a public welfare organization and establish the Sunrise Foundation, promising to use all profits to fund underprivileged children with artistic talent and children with congenital heart disease. Meanwhile, the group's president Isabella announced her resignation. The second event was the death of Isabella's current husband Christopher. He was found dead in Isabella's basement. The death was very tragic. His insides were emptied. His eyes were gouged out. He was eventually killed by a knife in his chest. The police suspect that the murderer was Isabella's ex-husband, but he has gone missing. The third thing is the news of Isabella's death. She committed suicide in a small rented room. She left a short apology letter. Everyone is confused. They don't understand why a CEO would choose to end her life in such a place. Only I know the reason why she did it. The apology letter only has 1 sentence. Dear husband, I'm sorry. I love you. I've come to find you. Watching this farce, I shake my head. It felt as if my soul was floating higher and higher, flying off into the golden distance. I felt neither love nor hatred, only indifference and letting go. My feelings for Isabella had long since vanished in the endless torment. I have been waiting for you all my life. But this time I'm sorry. I don't want to wait any longer. I will have a longer and better life. My future will be full of light and hope. But you will no longer be a part of it. We will each be happy. We will not meet again in the next life. Isabella's perspective the first time I saw Alexander. He was standing in front of a French window, painting. What he was painting, I can't remember, but I remember clearly the way the sunlight fell on his long eyelashes. It was extraordinary. They sparkled like little paintbrushes. At that moment, I thought he was even more beautiful than his painting. I know nothing about art, but he was a born artist. He had a cold personality. He was reserved. He was especially good at oil painting. The atmosphere of classical art was fully expressed in him. I began to actively pursue him. At first, he was always gentle but kept his distance. He seemed cold, however, as I continued to take the initiative to show my goodwill. He gradually became unable to resist. When I went to pick him up from school for the 18th time, bought him breakfast for the 32nd time, and the 356th time I sent him a goodnight message, he was finally moved. He kissed me, that seemingly indifferent mountain. It turned out that it also appeared vibrant because of my arrival. Our days together were very sweet. He didn't say much, but he was very considerate to me. With him, I didn't have to worry about anything. He always took care of everything. After graduation, our lives were stable and happy. I worked hard outside. He cooked for me at home. I thought our lives would always be this calm and happy. That day, my company ran into big trouble. It looked like it was about to go under. When I got home, I saw the trust in his eyes. I was afraid of letting him down. I really loved him, but it felt like my life was about to end. If the company went bankrupt, I would be in debt. My life would be over. I started to think about how to break up with him. I didn't want to burden him, but before I could say anything, I fainted from a stomach ulcer. When I woke up, I didn't see his familiar, worried expression. When I got home, I only heard his cold, tired voice. He had probably lost all patience with me. He didn't even want to see me for the last time. He just left a tape. When I listened to it, I realized that, but in fact, he had long since lost his feelings for me. When he learned that my company was in trouble, he immediately wanted to distance himself from me. In order to leave as soon as possible, he didn't take anything with him. I was very depressed. Just then, Christopher appeared. He had always had a crush on me, but I had never shown any interest in him, because my heart was only with Alexander. The person I loved so deeply had ruthlessly abandoned me when I was in trouble, leaving me to face the difficulties alone. I was even prepared to end it myself, and that person I once looked down on offered to give me $1,000,000. He was willing to work with me. Although I didn't like him, I finally accepted Christopher. Maybe I should have long since forgotten that heartless person, but he appeared again. After that, I really don't want to think about it anymore. I don't understand. Why does the deepest love give rise to the deepest hatred? I don't understand why the person I loved so deeply turned out like this. Anger made me lose my mind. I did a lot of things that I regretted for the rest of my life. I loved him so much, but I made him so sad. My consciousness gradually faded. I slit my wrists in the house I used to rent. I was about to die. I hope that after I leave, he is still waiting for me by the bridge of Nirvana. At that time, I must tell him personally, "I'm sorry, thank you, I love you."